Japanese realized that the Americans weren't giving up, and they needed to have the Americans soundly defeated in a great mid-ocean battle. They also decided to invade the islands of Hawaii. So the first stop was to grab Midway and use that as a permanent aircraft carrier to start bombing the Hawaiian Islands, working their way down to the islands of Kauai and Hawaii. And they would have seized Kauai and the Big Island before they got to Oahu. Even if they just seized those islands, they might have knocked America out of the war, because Americans wouldn't be able to get out of Pearl Harbor without being hit. The Americans knew the Japanese were coming. That's the only advantage the Americans had. So we managed to cobble together 3 carriers, rush them up to Midway, rush as many defenses as possible to Midway so we wouldn't be surprised. But we also knew we only had about 2.5 days to prepare, because the advance force of carriers and a few cruisers were to soften up Midway, but 1,000 miles behind them, about 2.5 days, was the primary invasion fleet, including the largest battleships in the world, Yamato and Musashi, on their way. So we knew we had to take care of the Japanese carriers before the invasion force showed up. And I'm not going to get into every detail of the Battle of Midway. Suffice to say, it's one of those, what Winston Churchill called a hinge of history. Everything changes from that moment on. Everything bends and it changes. It's considered one of the top 2 or 3 naval battles of all time because it's so decisive. But essentially, on the morning of the second day, the American torpedo planes were throwing themselves against the Japanese carriers, and they were being slaughtered, just completely slaughtered. In one squadron, only 1 man survived. As the remaining torpedo planes tried to get away, the combat air patrol over the carriers, the Zeros flying protection over the carriers, went down on the deck to nail those torpedo planes. They left the air open over the Japanese carriers just for a few minutes. But into that, and I've said it before, luck plays a big part in any battle. Into that flew the American dive bombers. And this right here is an SBD Dauntless. It's the standard American dive bomber during World War II. Very accurate. Now, dive bombing is something invented by the British but perfected by the Americans. We were very good at it. And our dive bombers flew into that window of opportunity and took immediate advantage of it. We sank 3 Japanese carriers in 5 minutes. The next day we nailed another carrier, but they nailed one of ours. But that was enough for the Japanese. The invasion fleet turned back. Hawaii was saved during the Battle of Midway. And the Battle of Midway is considered the primary turning point of the war in the Pacific. This bird here is an SBD that was recovered from Lake Michigan. And it's in great shape. This is the original paint. We've only rehung the cowl and repainted up there and refabric the control surfaces. This is how it came out of the water. It still had air in one of the tires. So if you want to store an airplane for a long time, the bottom of Lake Michigan is a good place to do it.